Hi guys, dude. I don't know what episode is this. Sorry. But I think it's like episode 6. But episode 6. Well, yeah. Anyways, we're for this episode, we're going to do the we're going to recreate those loops that we used to do in Scratch, like the forever loop and like the forever loop, and then and the if loop and the if loop too. But in the but in this new part of programming language, there's also a new type of loop called them for loop. And I remember it's basically the same as the repeat loop. It's basically the same as the repeat loop. You just but but instead of giving it one value, you can give it two values. The first value being for the for loop, I mean, you can give it at most three values. And the first value tells them where to start. For example, it could be any number. Just make sure that minimum number must be in whole integer. Must be a whole integer. And then when then when there's a minimum, there must be a maximum. So and that's where the second variable comes in. The second variable tells the maximum, tells the maximum number, the, the the maximum number of times that this loop can run on. And then the third number, you know how the repeat loops in Scratch, like repeat rep, repeat repeat the code inside that loop one time, then repeat it again until the total amount of times repeated is equivalent to the maximum number you put. Um, well, it in Python, you can now set the amount set the amount of steps repeated. That means after. That means after. You can think of it as like a variable, like the total amount of total times repeated. For total times repeated, that is set to 0. When the code repeated inside, it will go up by 1, and until that value, until that variable is equivalent to the maximum value, that is the second slot, it will continue repeating that. Well, the minimum value is basically the value you set, for the for for the number of times repeated, and then that maximum is where that variable will stop increasing. And then the third variable will increase that variable by whatever you put inside there. That is a whole integer. For example, I'll just for this is we call the for attribute, and then we must also call in the control variable that the program can change. I'll just a common control variable for this is I. We got this range. This will be a minimum value for I, and then our maximum value for I will, let's say, 12. And then we'll print. We make sure to make a tab so that this is in the for loop, just like in Scratch. Okay, so why do we want to use this for loop? Um, well, we use this for loop to, oh yeah, make sure, I almost forgot, make sure you should put a semicolon, that will raise the error if you don't. Okay, so the reason why you should use for loops is to basically simplify repeated codes, for example. And I'll delete this code. Instead of calling the print function like 11 times for printing out one thing, like looping, print again, looping, and without doing that, without doing an arduous process 11 times, we can, and resulting in 11 lines of code, we can just use the our good old for loop, setting the minimum and maximum values, and then don't forget the semicolon, and then print out our looping code. If you can wait, see, it's more efficient than just plainly writing out 12 lines of code, and it's more space free. Wanted to note, the for is not limited to the print function. You can assign variables in here. You can assign variables in here. You can you can write other functions, and heck, you can even put other loops in here. But this time we will set our range value. Don't forget that the code that we want to put must be in this loop. Sorry, another semicolon there. But that is for the for loop only. What about the while loop, and how to make a forever loop? Let's start with the while loop first. A while loop is like the if loop, where if a logical statement is true, that the logical statement given to this while assigned to this while loop is true, then it will execute the code inside. This can be anything, like an and or logical statement, inequality statement, or an inequality or equality statement. Let's just say we want to count from 1 to 20. So we will say count equals 0. We'll name a variable count, and then in this, while our count variable is less than 20, that's when we'll count to 20. We will here we call in our assigned variable count plus equal to 1. This is basically count plus 1. This is basically the same as count equals count plus 1. Count plus 1. And then we'll print our count. And as you can see here, it counted the 20 instead of manually printing out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, yeah, all the way to 20. Okay, so how to get a forever loop? Well, to get a forever loop, and you must be very specific with this. While one. It's just a fact. Since since one isn't really a logical. Since one is just equal. Since one is a. Since one equals one is a lo- since well, you may think one is not a logical statement. So let me run this for you. And yes, it's going to run infinitely. It's gonna run infinitely. It's gonna print a hello infinitely. So yeah. Why this one here? One is not a logical statement. So why is it? So why does this work? Mm. Well, this one here can be written as one equals one. Well, not well, well, not in here though. Not in here intuitively. Basically, one equals one. That is a true equation. But since one is a constant variable that isn't changed by any other any other numbers, this equation won't change. And since this while is going to execute the statements in this loop if a logical statement is true, and that one can be counted as a logical statement that is true. That means this one will be forever be true, I think, and it's going to repeat infinite times. And sorry if you didn't get that. I'm really sorry if you really didn't get that. My senior told me about that. But he didn't really told me how and why this this one here, this 1 year is well thing. Heck, you can also print. You can also use true too. That also works. Uh, I think we crashed the gaming, so I'll just close. Okay, can you stop? Okay, this is not stopping. I'm going to make another file. Since we can't really run anything on our terminal because I may have broken it, and I'm just going to have to and manually say the output. Well, using this, using these while and for loops, we let's make a program that generates stars. Uh, I have I have a program about I have a Python file ready to go about this. If I can find it, that is. Can you please wait? Okay, maybe about that later. Maybe about that later. For now, let's look at all the other programs I made. In this first program here, this is a basic for loop with all the two with all the three slots inside the minimum value for I being 2, the maximum value of this I or 21, and the number and the number at which I increases. This is 2. Oh yeah. Forgot to mention. Remember the print function where we manually, when I said that we want to print 12, 12 times, 11 times, and not 12 times. The reason for that, using this, is if we want to print 12 times, we can't just use 1 to 12. Then it will print out 11 times. Instead, we should put 0. We should put 0. And of course, we want to put 1 here, as it will just increase by 2. As it will just increase by 2. Why 0? Remember the index positioning where the first index of a list was 0, then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6, and so on. Yeah, the same logic follows for that. The starting number for if you want to such that the starting number for your control variable the starting number for a control variable such that the total number of times repeated is equivalent to this maximum value here, and must be 0 must be 0, because logically, after the logically speaking, and I don't know if this is true or not, and you say, and after it's, for example, if I just said 1 here, so I is 1, then after it runs the statement, it will increase by 1 by default. If you didn't set anything for the third slot, then the total times repeated will be 2. Then it'll run this again, and then 3, 4, 5, 6, then all the way to 12. But it's just that the program didn't count for the first for the minimum value that this variable started with. So the program ran it only 11 times because I didn't count for the 1 here, and not 12 times. So if we want to do that, so we want the program to run this for loop 12 times, we have to either set it to 0, set the minimum value to 0, or increase the maximum value by 1. and then only then the for loop will run 10 times. Anyway, that's the first program done, and we'll move on to the second one. Okay, I use these three inverted commas to close out text. The second, wait. This this is this is a program for the sum of the nth triangular number. If you don't know what a triangular number is, basically, to represent the nth triangular number, you need to add the sum of all the natural numbers, that is, whole numbers, from 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 1 to the to n, which is the number we're going to find. For example, if you want to find the fifth triangular number, that means n is equal to 5. You need to add all the natural numbers from 1 to 5, or 1 added with 2 added with 3 added with 4 added all the way to 5. That same logic will follow for every for any n number that is a positive whole number. For the nth triangular, you need to add 1 added with 2 added with 3 added with 4 all the way to n. And the formula, but instead of manually adding all of them, we can use the formula n by n plus 1 and multiply with n plus 1 whole divided with 2, and it's for computers, and the computers can just manually add them, so it's no different than using a formula. How will we do that? First we will set the value for n in case n is trie, and they will ask the user for user input by using this input value. Then after the program has received the input, then it's good. First we call the sum variable. This is the variable that we're going to represent. Then in this, and this basically adds the whole numbers from 1 to n. Using this for variable, I in range 1, that means I is equal to 1. Then the nth triangular, then this is our n, the plus 1. We do this because of we want this program to run n times and not n minus 1 times. So we either set the minimum value to 0, or in this case here, add the maximum value by 1. Then we'll add the sum by I. That means what this means, in the first time this code is repeated, I will be equal to 1. So the program will add 1 to the sum. Then on the second time the program repeats, n will increase by 1 here, as we didn't set the default whole number that makes that increase by. It's going to increase by 1, so I will be equal to 2, and so the sum will add that 2 to the sum, or 1, and that program is basically gonna do that. It will repeat this on those steps again and again until I is equivalent to the maximum value here. And then after that, after we've calculated the value for the triangular number, that is the sum, we will print it out using the formatting that we talked about earlier. Hey, maybe you should go check that out. So that you'll be able to format the variables. This code here, this basically checks if the sum is even or odd. If the sum is even or odd, you'll check for that. And you see this here. Do you think this is going to lead an error or not? Well, if you said no, then you're correct. Well, but if you said yes, then that is going to make an error. Hey, it's fine. This is not a test after all. This is not a test though. I'm not the test examiner. You shouldn't be sad about yourself, okay? Hey, listen. I make mistakes, you know? Everyone does. Not just you. Okay, so this variable, this is basically a boolean. So that means it can take only true, false, or none values. Basically, if this modulo 2 is equal to 0, that means the sum is divisible by 2, and sum is divisible by 2, that means it's even, because any even number must be divisible by 2. So we use that rule in our program to check if it is even. If our sum is not even, then this operation sign, or the modulo, basically it gives out the remainder of the remainder after dividing with this. For example, if I divide 22, that is even number, with a 2, we get no remainder, so the remainder is 0. But if I divide 23 by 2, the remainder is 1, because after subtracting 22 from 23, we get 1 on the decimal scale. So if this is not equal to 0, so this is not even number, so it's going to be false. It will turn it out as false. And basically, if a boolean is with arithmetic operator, it will go on values if this is true or false. Basically, it true means 1 and false means 0. For example, if the sum is an odd number, and that this one will be equal to 0, so it will turn false. And then if true is false, so false will turn into a 0, and 0 multiplied by any number is 0. So it will say, oh, and I made this program know that and said, oh, this is an odd number. I should print out this if this is true. And if it is false, it's going to print this. Pretty easy. Now I'm going to close that. And then move on to the next program. This one uses for loops with strings. Let's see here in this first for loop, for I in this string, and basically Basically, if you enter a string here, the I will set its value to the string of the very first character here. In this case, the uppercase U is the first character. So I will be equivalent to this letter, to this capital letter, to this string, and then on the second time it is repeated, it will increase by H. It's going to move to the second character, or this H, and it's going to repeat all the way to the very last character of the string, or in this case A. You can assign these to the imaginary values by you can say that I will you can say that these that you can see you can imagine indexes assigned to each value. For example, the first index, or 0 will be equal to I, and then that U is equal, it has an index equal 0. So that means I is then equal to U. Then the index increases by 1, then I will switch to this, then increases by 1 again, I will switch to this, all the way to, and that logic will follow to all the way to the last character. Well, this upper function is a little bit self-explanatory. It converts lowercase strings into uppercase strings. But how about this end here? Well, basically, hey, remember the sum function from remember the sum thingy from before, where it adds the values of I to the sum to get the nth triangular number. This follows like this has the same logic, but with strings. What I mean by that is, when I is equal to U, it will print out U. But when I goes to the second index, or H, it will combine the last value. It will combine this U with H to get to print out Then when I switches to this H, that means I has moved to the third character of the string. It will add that third character to the to get well I'm just using this as an example, but the string used may change. And basically even the space is included. Well, in programming, the space bar is also considered as a character because it is inside a string. So it's going to count the space. It's going to add that space using this n. Without the n function, it's going to individually print out the characters, and it's going to individually print out the characters instead of combining each text together. Yeah, that same logic follows for lists. What the first index, or when z is equal to 0, z will be equal to 1. Then z moves to the second index, so z is equal to 2. Oh yeah, sorry, that's for the end function. Well, this string here, this is what separates the two. Separates each combined string. For example, For example, if I print out here, it the program will return 1 spacebar, 2 spacebar, 3 spacebar, 4 spacebar, and then 5 because of the plus because of the spacebar here in the string that divides each term combined. Um, if you want to remove that spacing, you can delete this. It's pretty simple. But these are just examples, and I'm not gonna really explain them all. I'm not gonna really explain them all today. Maybe in the next episode, I'll probably go. I'll probably I'll probably explain more of this. So yeah, stay in tune for that, Gavin. And I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you enjoyed this video. And yeah, bye bye.